Hello, it's been about 3 months now since I built this quad, and I've clocked up quite a few hours flying it, and I've learned a few things over that 3 months. So I wanted to make a kind of a review video to go over what went right and what went wrong, and some problems I have and had, and things I might have done differently, which parts were good and which parts were not, and things like that, and just generally stuff that I would have liked to have known myself 3 months ago when I started. So that's what this video is going to be about. First thing I wanted to say though, and I would have also liked to tell myself this 3 months ago, don't use your credit card directly at Banggood. Now, your mileage may vary of course, and I'd actually been using Banggood no trouble at all like that for about 6 months. But right about the time I started making this video series, my credit card got hacked, shall we say. Mysterious payments started appearing. Fortunately, the credit card companies are pretty good at detecting that. And they rang me up and they cancelled the card and all that kind of stuff. And just coincidentally, right about that time, I had made a purchase at AliExpress. So I thought, oh, AliExpress, must be them. So I just kept using Banggood as I had been directly with my credit card when I got my new credit card. And it happened again. And unfortunately, that time, it had to have been Banggood. So as much as I like shopping there, I can't recommend doing it directly with your credit card, but you can pay in a bunch of other ways, like with PayPal. So I use PayPal now. So yeah, I would have liked to have known that 3 months ago. So I feel a little bit bad that I recommended everybody to go to Banggood and buy all these things, and then it turned out to be a problem, for me at least. So I put a little notice in the spreadsheets that I had in my first video, so hopefully people saw that, but I just thought it would be worth mentioning again directly in a video. Even if it's 3 months later, it might save somebody some trouble somewhere down the line. So, will I still be using Banggood for shopping? You bet I will. There's no way I'm going to be able to stop snorting that crack anytime soon. There was one other thing I wanted to mention about purchasing stuff, and that is that I probably won't be buying LiPo batteries from Banggood anymore. I'll be getting those from Hobby King, simply because the shipment times from Banggood are so long. They ship either from Sweden or the Netherlands for some reason, and they take about 4 to 6 weeks, whereas I bought some batteries on Hobby King a while ago and they arrived to me in 3 days. So that was a nice surprise, and this is not going to be relevant to everyone, I understand, but I thought it was worth mentioning. I'm in Japan, so if you're anywhere in this region it may be relevant to you, but you might want to try a shipment of LiPos from Hobby King or somewhere else just to see how long it's going to take them to get there, because Hobby King also has pretty good prices on LiPos as well. One thing I noticed though, if you're buying other stuff from Hobby King, the shipment prices are not that great, and the shipping time was also not that great. So my experience with Singapore Post, not Singapore Post, the EMS Japan Post that I tried last time to buy my transmitter, the 6-channel transmitter box, that took 3 weeks, whereas the LiPos took 3 days. So anyway, this is my little trick for getting quicker shipment. So I'll show you as an example here. This is the antenna that I was looking at getting a while ago. So I'll look at this as an example. And when I put this in my cart, we'll see that it is a bit over $5, 538 yen. So that's great. And then I go to the shipment page, the purchase page, to buy that. Oh, what's this? We're going to have to pay $48 to get that? Well, there are other options here. You could select some cheaper shipping options. So Singapore Post, I've heard, is not very good. EMS is what I tried last time. That took 3 weeks. Not very impressed with that. The other ones down here gradually get cheaper. This one here, International Registered Airmail, that is $4. I'm not sure about that. And this one here, I haven't tried those. But if you're getting LiPos, you can't use those anyway, at least to where I am. So one thing that you can do if you're if you want the FedEx shipment, and I don't see FedEx on here, which is what gave me a very quick shipment last time. So what I am going to do in future is find the cheapest possible LiPo battery. So just select 1S at the top and sort by price from the cheapest. And you can see there's a battery there for $1.24 roughly. So when I put this in my cart and go to the checkout page, now we see that the only shipping option to Japan at least is FedEx, and this is $19. So it brings our overall shipment to $26 down from the $48 that it was before. And this, I think, will be much quicker than any of those other options. I haven't done all that many purchases from Hobby King yet like this, but I think it's worth trying this little trick in your area and seeing which is better. Anyway, so probably the best way to start by saying what went right and what went wrong is to have a little look at the things that I've changed since the end of the last videos, or since the end of the first, like the actual build when I completed it. So one thing that I changed was I went around to all these wires here, and I think I said in one of my videos that I wanted to change from using these jumper wires because they weren't a very permanent solution. But surprisingly they performed pretty well. They never pulled out and they never seemed to disconnect or anything like that. So I just left them there, except what I did was I went around and I took off all the little square plastic, these kind of, normally they have these little square plastic things on them. So I took those off and I soldered them down and put heat shrink over them. Focus. What is it with this focus? Alright, so it's you may be able to see there, but they are now soldered and heat shrinked onto those pins there. So that makes them really secure, and that's been great. Haven't had any trouble with that. Works perfectly. And it should reduce a tiny little bit of vibration just in case those little plastic case things were rattling around a little bit. Speaking of vibration, this frame being made out of wood seems to have performed quite well, and I've made 2 more quads since this one, but this one remains probably the best performing in terms of when you stick a camera on it, you get a better video from it. And I haven't really done a whole lot of effort to reduce that kind of thing, but this one so far has been the best performing for that in that respect. Speaking of camera mounts, all I did to mount the camera was I got the little case thing that you probably get with the Mobius when you buy it, usually I think, and I just drilled some holes. You can see a couple of holes at the back there where I've drilled and ended up not using them, but the one at the front is the same, and so you'll have to countersink the hole a little bit so that you can still slide the Mobius in so that it's perfectly flat from this angle. It's a bit of a pain in the ass to do that actually, but I just got a larger drill and just turned it by hand to countersink it. So it's you'll need countersinkable screws as well, like the triangle head ones. Okay, I think you can get what I mean. And then on the bottom of that, you'll want to put some kind of a spacing thing. And I'm using 2 of these little rubber circular grommet things that are made for 3mm screws, and they work pretty well. And I think this gives you a little bit of vibration damping, but more importantly than that, it gives you a little bit of spacing between here and the panel that you're going to stick it on. And that's important when you come to remove the Mobius from this case, because the way you remove it is by pushing these little... Nothing's focusing, is it? Alright. By pushing these little tabs up like that. So these tabs need to have some room to be pushed up like that, right? And if you stick this case directly onto the wood, you're not going to have any room to push those tabs up, and by God is it hard to get out. So if you stick the Mobius case onto something like that, make sure you put a little bit of spacing in there. That's my recommendation. And in general, yeah, just make everything secure. Try and cut down on loose flapping things. I stuck this on here with the zip tie fairly early on, and I've never regretted that actually. They're only about $3, these battery alarm things. So me being quite forgetful, I always forget to take it if it's not strapped on, kind of like my head. But if it's strapped on there, no problems. It's cheap, doesn't matter. It's not going to break or anything in a crash. I'd be surprised if it did. But yeah, that was a great idea, I think. And it's always in the right place, and it doesn't rattle around and cause problems. What else have I changed here? I've changed from using this Dean's or T-plug style battery connector, and I've changed all my batteries and all of my quads that had one of these on. I've changed them to using the XT60, this yellow plug here, and these, I much prefer these. I know there's a ongoing discussion about which is better, but I think after using both of them, my vote is firmly in the XT60 camp. And the main reason for that is because, well, there's two reasons. The main reason was that I had about 5 crashes one day on my other quad, and it would fly for a while just fine, and then it would just drop out of the sky. And it turned out to be a problem with this like bendy spring tab thing that we have in here. At least I think that's what it was. So if you pushed the plug in 50% of the way, it would be great, and then if you pushed it in all the way, it would stop connecting. So at that point, I just had a huge distrust of these plugs from that point on. So that was the main reason. The other reason is that when you're soldering these up, you just have 2 flat, this is the reverse side of the plug here, you just have 2 plain flat tabs like that, and it's quite hard to, for one thing, you have to spread out your wire a little bit to get them the best area connecting with it, and it's hard to hold it on there while you're soldering, even if you're using your helping hands or whatever. So it's pretty tricky to hold on. But with the XT60s, they've really done a good job of avoiding that problem, because not only do you not have to splay out the wire at all, you can just keep it in the round, just keep it round, if this makes sense. But you can also just poke it in the hole, and it's very easy to hold in there with your holding hands, and you get a nice solder connection, because you can just let the solder flow into that little cup there, and it's much easier to solder. And there's also a lot more area to grab hold of when you're pulling them off. And what else was there? Yeah, they're also easier to put in, because you don't have to. I always found that this little spring tab got in the way when I was trying to plug these Dean's plugs in, so I have said goodbye to these for good, I think. So what else went great? I would say in general, I'm really happy with wood. So I have my other couple of quads are either aluminium or plastic, nylon sort of thing. But I'm really happy with wood, and my next quad is going to be wood again. It's cheap, it's easy to find, it's very easy to work with, and like I say, it sort of seems to have pretty good vibration damping properties. Now I showed you a few things on here that I've changed, but one other thing that's quite a major change that's probably not immediately obvious is that it's not balsa anymore. So one of the things that went wrong was balsa wood, and I think in my first few videos I had a few doubts about balsa as I was building it, because it was quite soft, and I had to add little like plates, plywood plates on here, so that when the zip ties were on there, they didn't squeeze into it too much. Zip ties are great, by the way. That's another thing that went well. When you have a crash, the zip ties will just break, and as long as you have some zip ties with you when you're out at the flying area, you just stick them back on and away you go. It's really great. It's happened a few times. I'm very happy with this zip ties arrangement. Works surprisingly well, and they stay surprisingly secure. But anyway, balsa wood. I would not do balsa wood again. It's just not really as strong as a more hard wood like this one. And let's just have a look at what happened to the balsa wood frame, actually. So I didn't change it just because I wanted to. I actually had a bit of a problem, as you can see. And the problem was kind of caused by me, really, because in one of my later videos I had the very smart idea that I would cut a little indentation out of the wood here to put my FPV camera in, just a little small FPV camera that I have. And I thought I was very smart for doing that, but there seems to be a trend with this project that when I do something that I think is very smart, it turns out to be not very smart at all. And this is one of those things. So there's two problems here. The gouge out of here weakened this point of the wood, and right next to it there is a hole which also weakens the wood a little bit. And this point here is where the support from the main part of the frame here finishes. So when we got a decent crash from this angle, it just broke this off immediately. And I have a little bit of video from that actually, because it was surprising that I could just poked it back in like that, and as you can see it sort of holds there a little bit, and with the extra support from the plywood on each side I could actually keep flying it a little bit. So I pushed my luck and pushed it to where it couldn't be pushed anymore, and eventually, yeah, we ended up with another broken arm, and basically I decided that this frame needed to be changed completely. But fortunately, like I say, the wood is very cheap, and as long as these plywood plates here are not broken, you can just replace the arms completely. And in this time-lapse video here, you can see this video is about 30 seconds long, but this is a time-lapse of around about 3 hours, I think. So I started from the broken state with the balsa frame, stripped it all down, and cut and measured and made the whole new arm pieces from normal wood. It's like some kind of pine or cypress or something, I think. And that took about 3 hours. So it was good to go again in 3 hours. A little bit longer than I would have liked, but still, it's not bad that you can just fix everything with a piece of wood that costs like $1 or less, I think. So yeah, that's another reason why I really like wood. By the way, somebody asked me what the total payload was for this quad, and I guess what they really mean is the maximum takeoff weight. And in that video there you can see I'm using an 1800 milliamp hour 3-cell, and I have the lights on there and the video transmitter and everything, and that's a total of 520 grams with Mobius and everything as well. And I don't think you could really push it much further than that. So I would say 520, 550, I guess, for a maximum weight with these motors and these propellers and everything. Another thing that didn't go so well was the use of these JST connectors. So you can see I have one on here for when I'm using a battery that is not an XT60 battery. So I just plug my JST connecting battery into there, and that works fine because it doesn't really move much. But I noticed that these plugs, so that's these plugs here I'm talking about, the wire that they come with is quite stiff, and it doesn't take well to bending. Basically you bend it backwards and forwards enough, it's going to just break. So I had a few problems, actually not on this quad, but I thought I'd mention it anyway. So I had this kind of arrangement where I have my video transmitter connecting on here, and just the movement of this moving around a little bit occasionally was enough to break through the wire completely at one of these joints. So if you're going to be using these cheap, they are quite cheap, it's like $1 for 10 or something like that, $2 for 10, so they're well worth the price. But if you're going to use those, try and use them somewhere a little bit more like this, where they're not going to be moving around too much. Alright, what else do we have? So I think that's it for the... Oh, sorry. I was going to mention this as well. Propellers that I've been using are... I haven't used that one yet. I've just been using these cheap gem fan props, and they work really quite quite well. I haven't balanced them at all. I mean, I'm usually going to break them before they have a chance to be used much anyway. But there's the 5030 was the first one I started using, and I found these to be quite good, but I prefer the 5040, which is just gives you a little bit more punch at the expense of battery life, I guess. But yeah, I've pretty much been using the 5040s all the time. They seem to be just the perfect match for these motors and the size of frame and everything. I also tried these, not on this quad of course, because they're a little bit, oh, they could work, I suppose. These are 6030, and they are, I didn't like them very much. They don't have a lot of punch when you accelerate, and they also sort of seem to slow you down a lot when you're trying to descend, just because they have a larger area, and it's harder to get down through that prop wash, I think. So I tried a couple of sets of these, and basically I just haven't used them since. I did try them on this quad here, because I figured that this quad, the motors are a lot more powerful, so I thought they might be better using a 6-inch prop, because they have the power to turn it quicker. But unfortunately what happened with those motors is that they are so strong that they just sort of rip these props apart basically. So they're kind of flimsy feeling as well. And just recently I've also discovered that Banggood is now selling these ones here, which are 5045. I think we can focus there. No, what is it? Come on, I need a focus button or something. But yeah, there we go. So these are 5045s, and I haven't actually used these yet, but they look pretty cool. They're nice and sturdy. I just did a quick flight just inside my room, just to see how noisy they are and stuff. But one thing I'm wondering about is that the surface area is a fair bit smaller than the other ones. So I'm guessing to get the same amount of lift they have to spin faster. So I'm not sure, maybe these motors, these are 2300 kV motors, so I'm not sure if they'll be okay, or maybe some faster spinning motors might be in order for these props. But I'll give these a try soon and see what they turn out like. But yeah, I like, they are considerably more sturdy than the other ones, so I'm quite keen to see what they turn out like. Okay, I think that's it for the quad build. Overall, I'm really happy with this build. I would make another H frame again. I like the way you can stick things on the front here. You have lots of room. One thing I might do differently a little bit is to, in fact, I think the only thing I would do differently is, now that I know that you can use the RF24 module directly with the multi-Wii, like you don't need to have basically this Arduino Pro Mini here is just not necessary anymore. So probably what I would try and do is just make it so that we don't have the Arduino Pro Mini here at all, and it's just this IC Station multi-Wii board and the RF module only. And I would probably also try and fit it inside the main body of the case here. I gave up on putting the battery inside. I think in one of my earlier videos I was trying to put the battery inside here and stuff. It worked for a while, but then I started using larger batteries and it just didn't work. You'll notice here that the plywood has actually broken here, and that's from quite a few crashes, aka heavy landings, landing directly downwards with a battery that was a little bit thinner than this frame. Well, they're all thinner, I think. Yeah, so that, like I say, it's easy to replace. I haven't bothered to replace it because it doesn't really affect things too much. But yeah, the plywood is not invincible, but it's at least it's cheap. Alright, so the quad, yeah, I'm very happy with the quad. Now, as for the transmitter, I can't say I'm totally happy with the transmitter, and that's because to this day I have never really gotten a radio connection that I'm 100% satisfied with. It always seems like it works great one day, and then for some reason the next day, inexplicably, it doesn't work very well, or it works intermittently, or it doesn't work at distance, or something like that. And it's just been a constant headache trying to get a solid connection out of it. So I think the main issues are the power supply to the RF24 module. So I started using the little caps on everywhere. So we have a little cute little blue capacitor on there, and also in the transmitter I have caps, and on all my other quads and everywhere else that I'm using it I also have caps as well. And I don't know, it just doesn't seem to have made any difference, to be honest. But then again, there have also been a bunch of other problems. Basically anything that can go wrong has gone wrong. One problem I had pretty early on with this transmitter was that after saying in one of my earlier videos that these pots feel very nice and feel like they might be, high quality. Turns out that one of them at least seems to have a problem. It seems like there may be some lubricant leaking out into the contacts, so you'll get very jittery connection. And because I had all of these switches and dials connected to the same set of wires, whenever I moved this around a little bit you could see it affecting the other switches and dials. So I just removed both of these from the circuit completely to be safe, and I wish I could say that improved things, but there were still other issues. I also, instead of using, I'm not going to open this now, but in one of my earlier videos I showed there was like a circuit board on here, and the circuit board had a 5-volt step down regulator on it, and I was using power from that to power my Arduino Pro Mini. So in case there was something on that circuit board that was screwing things up, I just cut that circuit board out completely, and now all I have is another change I made was to move to using LiPos instead of nickel metal hydrides in here. It's a lot lighter and easier, quicker to charge and everything. So all I have in here now is basically just a switch that goes between that LiPo and the Arduino Pro Mini to turn it on. So I was just trying to cut out anything that seemed like it might have been a problem. Another problem I had with, where did we have that? Another problem that you may come across is these connectors that go between the high power RF24 module and your antenna. So this is going from my RF24 through to the antenna mount inside there. And I've also starting to look at these connectors with quite a bit of suspicion as well. Mainly because they move, right? So anything that can move around a bit, I'm starting to think may be a source of problems, because that might explain why it's fine one day and then the next day it's not. It just got bumped or something. But I also discovered a problem that can come about with these, and the problem is that if you take this connection here and you push it down like that so that it's bent, it seems to either short the coax inside or cause a disconnection somehow, and basically the antenna is just as good as useless. It's almost like the RF24 module is not there at all. It doesn't do anything. And I discovered that just by chance. Like, I'd have a smaller battery on here that didn't quite go out to that far width-wise, and everything would be great. And then I'd land and change the battery to one that was a little bit wider so that it was pushing down on here, and then it wouldn't fly at all. So after a bit of investigation I realized that the problem was that. So yeah, that's another tip I can give you. If you're using these wires to connect your high power RF module to an antenna, don't bend them. Let them be very relaxed and keep them nice and straight, and don't put them under any stress. Yeah, so finding out all this stuff the hard way. Anything that can go wrong will. Right, what else do we have? Okay, I also discovered that because I was doing a few different things with the radio connection, like I was trying the what's it called, telemetry, AC payload and stuff. So I had a few different things going on with my radio protocols, and I noticed that if you use packet sizes that are different, the radio connection will still work, but it will be very delayed, almost sluggish to work. So in one case I left the quad using a packet size of 4 bytes, I think. So there was just 6 bytes, I think. So there was just the throttle, yaw, pitch and roll and some switch values. So that was 6 bytes that it was expecting. And the transmitter, I had a bunch of things going on for my telemetry. So the transmitter was actually sending it 8 bytes or 12 bytes or something like that. And although it worked, it was very sluggish. Like, you'd move the sticks and it would sort of it'd be like, yeah, okay, whatever. And it would take sort of a half a second, well, not that long, but, a noticeably delayed reaction from the quad. So if you see something like that, you may want to check, or if you're playing around with different radio protocols like I was, you may want to check that the two packets that you're sending, the one that you're sending and the one that you're expecting to receive, are the same size. So that's my experience with that one. What else did we have? Let's see. The PCB antenna on here, if you're using telemetry, that's not very good, obviously. I found this to be okay for a receiver, but one thing that you have to be careful of with that is if your transmitter is using a antenna like this, you won't want to get too far away if your antenna is pointing at the quad. So what I mean is, like, the gain that this antenna has is in a shape like a donut, so it sort of goes out like this on that side and like that on that side. But up at the top, it's fairly weak. So if your antenna happens to be pointing directly at the quad like that when you're flying, you'll get results like this. So those two clips there were taken about 2 or 3 minutes apart, and what I was doing was flying FPV, and I sort of forgot which way I was facing towards the quad. And even though the first time it occurred to me that this is probably the problem, because I flew exactly in the location where the antenna was pointing at the quad like that, for some reason 2 minutes later I completely forgot about that and did exactly the same thing again. So I'm thinking that that's what the issue was in that case. So yeah, just keep in mind that you want to be sort of holding the antenna so that it's like that to the quad to get the best radio reception in that case. So yeah, like I say, I haven't really managed to get a solid radio connection as yet. And there was a suggestion by Mr. Holy Crapsky, who suggested to shield the RF24 module with a metallic shield, and that's a very good idea, because come to think of it, every other radio transmitter that I've seen, apart from the cheap crappy one in the Hubsan X4, all of those have had some metal shielding around them. So it's a very, very good suggestion, which I will try. I actually pulled this metal case off another transmitter that I have, and I was intending to use this with my high power RF24, but it's a little bit wide and it doesn't really fit on very well. And also these high power RF24 modules that I'm using, they don't really have any good places to solder on a case like this. So what I'm going to do is actually be a bit lazy, and I'm just going to buy another couple of RF24 modules that have a case like this on them already. And I'm interested to see how that will go. So yeah, those should be arriving sometime soon. By the way, holy crapsky, you don't have your replies turned on, so nobody can reply to your very clever comments. So you might want to turn those on if you want a response to YouTube comments, I mean. Alright, so I think I'm just about done. I did want to say a quick thing about, would I buy these parts again? Yes, I think pretty much everything here I would buy again. This ESC and motor set were very cheap. As I mentioned earlier, I don't like the wires on the motors very much, but if you stick them down solidly so that they can't move around, you should be okay. But they've performed just fine. They run very well on 3S as well, 2S and 3S. Quite smooth. Like I say, this is the smoothest quad I have so far, even though I've spent a lot more on motors for the other quads that I have, and for the frame as well, actually. I'm not sure that there's anything on here that I would not do again, to be honest. It's all pretty good. There is one thing parts-wise, it's not really parts-wise, but it's equipment-wise, that I would probably not buy again, and that's this. And it's not because it's bad or it doesn't work or anything, but one thing I've noticed is that the charging plans or modes it has are a little bit limited. And in particular, one thing that I would like to have that this doesn't have, if we just look at LiPo storage. So if you're doing a charge, you can say I want to charge this at 4 amps or something for my large battery, so it charges quicker. And unfortunately, on the storage mode, if I try and do that, I can go down from 1 amp, but it doesn't let me go up any further than 1 amp. So that means if I want to charge my large 4000 milliamp battery up to storage capacity, it's going to take 4 times as long as it should, really, I think. So that's kind of annoying. So it's not that this charger is broken or it doesn't work or it's faulty or anything. It's just that the modes that it has are somewhat limited, and I would kind of want something a little bit better than this, because I do use this storage a lot. I pretty much every time I get home after flying, I'll put all my batteries onto storage charge for 2 reasons. One is that it's better for them to be kept, and I'm not really sure exactly when I'm going to be using them again. And the other reason is that next time I come to charge them, it'll be quicker to charge them because they're already sort of, a third charged already. So that's why I do storage charge a lot. And the other thing that I would like to be able to do is, let's say I don't use a battery. Say I charge 5 batteries, I go out to the flying area and I fly, and I have to come home early for whatever reason, or it starts raining or something. And I get home and I have a battery that is fully charged that I want to put to storage charge. This charger doesn't know how to take a battery that has a higher than storage voltage and discharge it so that it's at storage voltage. So I'm presuming that a more expensive charger would do something like that for me. So yeah, I'm not complaining that there's any problem with this charger. It hasn't ruined any of my batteries or anything. But I would probably look around a little bit more and spend a little bit more, maybe even 2 or 3 times as much. This was only $20, so I would be happy with spending $50 or something on something else that has more features. Oh, there was another thing that what was it? Oops. The other thing that I wanted to use occasionally was LiPo discharge. So let's say I'm discharging a 3S battery, and I want to discharge it so that it only goes down to 3.3 volts per cell, because I don't want to go too much lower in case I damage the cells, right? But unfortunately, the only options we have here are So for 3S it's 9 volts, for 2S it's 6 volts, that's it. So your discharge is always going to be discharging down to 3 volts per cell, which seems a little bit extreme. So I would like this setting to be modifiable as well, to say 6.6 here instead of 6. Anyway, that's not a big deal. It works perfectly well otherwise. So anyway, that's going to do it for my review, roundup, comments, hints and tips, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, I really enjoy this, and I'm pleased with these motors set and everything. It's doing really great. Good value for money. Don't use a credit card at Banggood. Whatever. I think I've said everything. All right, thanks for watching, and I'll see you later.